Hi, Karen, and welcome to Reframe Club today. It is such a pleasure to have you here. I've been following you on Instagram for quite some time and your work, and you've been a real inspiration to me, but also I've learned a lot from you. So it's a real pleasure to have you here today. But for our members who perhaps haven't followed you or seen you before, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and what it is that you do.
I can, and hi to you, and thank you for having me on. So my name's Karen, and I'm 40. I like to get that in because I think it's important that we showcase women of an older age. I'm a single mom of two, and I'm a non-diet fitness professional with my own small business. I also like to say that I'm actually in receipt of Universal Credit at the moment. I'm on their 12-month startup program because it's important to me, as well as the work I do, to break the stigma around parents on government benefits. So I do like to talk about that as part of who I am.
No, absolutely, and it's really important. I think you said. I think a lot of the work you said yourself about the non-diet approach to fitness, and it might be nice to kind of people who follow me will understand the non-diet approach from a nutrition point of view, but how that kind of like plays out into fitness. But also, I think the whole movement around health at every size and non-diet, it ebbs out so much wider, doesn't it? We talk about stigma in every kind of shape and form, don't we, in terms of society as well?
Yeah, because that's the part of it. Like the stigma is across all health professionals, but obviously I'm a fitness professional, so I focus in on that because also as well, whilst you're learning, you understand that this affects so many different areas, and you can become a bit overwhelmed. So I do think it's about finding how it affects the area that you're involved in. So for me, my focus has been on how that looks in regards to fitness and exercise and movement.
And how did you come to here then? So how did you what came first for you? Was it your career in health and exercise, or was it an interest in non-diet? Kind of which one informed the other?
Well, it was my career in exercise. So I was already a fitness professional. I qualified in 2015, probably 2014, and then I started. So I was a fitness instructor to begin with. I started in my local community. I was doing outdoor fitness sessions, and then that evolved into women's fitness sessions at the gym where I was training, kickboxing. So I was already a fitness professional, and I was probably 1 foot in, 1 foot out of diet culture. I already knew that it didn't feel quite right. There was something not quite connecting. I already was coming up against other professionals within the industry. The messages just weren't sitting well, but I didn't know what to do with that information or that feeling because there was no other way to approach fitness that I knew of then. But then body positivity started to become more mainstream, and I'd started to learn more about body positivity, but I do like to be transparent that it was the whitewashed version that I first came across. You know, the self-love, body confidence, didn't really know much about the political side of it. And then I started university, and I came across the health at every size research whilst I was studying exercise and health at university, and that was when I kind of opened the doors to, oh my goodness, this is another approach that feels so much more aligned to what I already believed.
And for people who don't know, would you mind like giving a kind of like snapshot of what health at every size means?
Yeah, so for transparency, I did take some information from the ASDAH website, which is the Association for Size, Diversity and Health. And to me, it's an alternative approach to health. In my line of work, it's an alternative approach to building a relationship with exercise and movement. And they define it as a continuously evolving alternative to weight-centric approach. It's also a movement to promote size acceptance, to end weight stigma, and to lessen the cultural obsession with weight loss and thinness. And I translate it as it's a way for us to explore benefits of exercise, movement without the narrative and the toxicity of diet culture. So it's almost like a reclamation. I see it as a reclamation of movement, really, without the pressure of weight loss or thinness or body changes. You know, it just takes a whole lot of pressure off, and you get to explore fitness in a way that means something integral to you.
Yeah, massively. And I think I love the way you encapsulated that, because it's exactly that. Because what, I don't know how you found it, but I almost found like diet culture, especially in fitness and in even nutrition, it kind of decouples us from our body. We become like really cerebral about it, and we don't listen, we don't tune in anymore to whether or not it's benefiting us or not. We just take these external validators. You know, did the rings close on my Apple Watch? Did the needle on the scale move? What are my gains? You know, all of that. When actually, movement and how it feels, that kind of from a nutrition point of view, we talk about body food congruence, but body movement congruence actually is so much wider than that, isn't it? And it's that whole thing about health versus weight, that weight centric approach versus a health centric approach. And the benefits of movement, when we begin to look at them aside of body shape and size, are really wide reaching, aren't they?
Yeah, mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, because I kind of see movement that it can be meditative, that it can be embodying. You know, I find it really a good way to bring myself back to myself, if that makes sense, because you can become really aware of your body. And whereas I didn't have any of those values around it when I was deep in diet culture myself, it was all about, like you say, those external pressures, and a lot of the time it's either an all or nothing approach as well, isn't it? Because you know, and one of the reasons as well, I think, was whilst I came over to this approach myself, was I was getting to that stage where it's like, what am I willing to actually give? Like, how much more can I give to stay thin? Do you know what I mean? It just became absolutely exhausting. So I think I'd reached my diet rock bottom.
Yeah. And so how did that, I mean, if you feel comfortable sharing, kind of like how did that manifest for you? You're obviously within a gym. Were you working in a gym, like a gym culture, kind of embedded in it? How was it? How did it look? What did that look like for you?
Well, I wasn't working in the gym then. What happened is I was working casually in a gym, and then I went to university full-time 2016. But I was powerlifting, and powerlifting is weight categorized. So you had to stay in a certain, well, you didn't have to, but it became where you felt like you had to stay in a certain weight category in order to have a chance to qualify for nationals. And I was finding it harder and harder to stay in this weight category, because it's almost like my body was fighting against itself. I was training very hard. My body obviously needed more fuel. I was putting on muscle mass. So all of this would obviously add to how much your body weighs, because, you know, you're increasing mass, which is totally normal. But it's almost like I was trying to fight against this natural
biological fact.
And the last time that I had to make weigh-in, I won't even discuss, because it was very disordered, but that was my, like, this is not normal, you know. So a lot of things seem to happen together, because I lost my mum suddenly too. So like she died unexpectedly. She was only 58, and I do think that kind of brings you a lot of perspective as well, like, how much time am I going to spend on this earth trying to be thin, when in the grand scheme of things it's just miserable. So there was a few factors.
And that's such a powerful, and I'm sorry that you had to experience that loss with your mum, and 58 is a really young age. And there's no words. That's just, it's not fair. But equally, as you say, when we can make that breakthrough, I read some horrendous statistic the other day about a woman spends on average 17 years on a diet of their life. 17 years. Imagine what you could do with that back, that time, that energy, how you would do things differently. We just said, oh, here's more than a decade and a half back. And I don't think until people see it black and white, because it's so insidious, isn't it? It becomes part of they're just thoughts we have all the time. You go out to the sandwich shop at lunchtime and you're looking at the food labels and you're not choosing the sandwich you want, you're choosing the one that you think is going to fit. You know, it's that energy, that constant mental energy as women that we're constantly giving over. And I tend to jump on my patriarchy soapbox about this, because I really do believe it keeps us small. I think, you know, if women are underfed, then, you know, and all our time and energy is caught up in this meeting this ideal, which shifts I mean, even in my lifetime, I've lived through all these different fashionable body shapes. I'm the same age as you, Karen. And you think we're never going to achieve it. I'm never going to be all of these things to all of these people.
Yeah, exactly. And even in our lifetime, it's changed. Like, you know, when I was young, it was like, you know, slim, skinny thighs, and it was all like, oh, does my bum look big in this? And now it's all changed again. Now, you know.
Yeah.
So even within our lifetime.
Yeah.
And then it's going to change again. So, and you're right, what you said about the way that it holds us back. Look, it wasn't just about dieting and maintaining thinness. It was lack of confidence. You know, keeping you very small. I was scared to show up. I didn't really know my voice. I didn't have a voice. I do believe that it keeps you preoccupied, distracted, and what's the word? Compliant. You know, docile. You're just going along with life, and you're not really fully participating in it.
No, and that kind of self-moderation, we're taught to be quiet, compliant, modest, you know, all of those things. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember once standing in Greggs, yes, because I work in nutrition and I eat Greggs, it's fine. Standing in Greggs and watching men and women come in differently, and I was getting a breakfast thing with one of those days where you're really late for school and you say to your kids, if you leave now, we'll stop at Greggs. Get something on the way.
Get out the door.
Yeah, I promise you can have a bacon roll and a hot chocolate from Greggs if we can get out the door. So we were doing that, and we were there, and I watched all these men come in, these guys who were working, obviously contractors, you know, up early, getting their cup of tea, and they all came in and they all just ordered. I'll have a bacon roll, cup of tea, I'll have a cup of coffee and a sausage wrap, and off they went. And in that moment, it really struck me the freedom they had, or felt it wasn't even there. There was no standing in front of the counter thinking. It was just, I'll take, I'll eat, I'll move on with my day.
Yeah.
And I thought
amazing. It's the difference.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you something else that helped me a little bit as well. I started dating a strong man in 2017, and you know, he ate, and there was never any judgment of what I ate. I was, you know, he would encourage me to like eat more, and that really helped for the first time ever to have a partner that wasn't judgmental about the amount or type of food that I was eating. In fact, it was actively encouraged. So I found that quite helpful too. Like, almost like not that you have to wait for someone else to give you permission, but it's certainly helpful when you've got a partner who, you know, because in my past experience, I was with partners who would comment on my weight and would comment on how my body looked, and I felt like I had to look a certain way to be acceptable to them. Whereas obviously my partner was not like that at all. So that was very refreshing, and that helped a lot.
Yeah, and it goes back to that thing about who and what we surround ourselves with, and even social media. Like, what are we feeding ourselves in that space? Whose messages are we taking on board? And sometimes, you know, what can look overtly like a really kind of, oh, I'm really positive and I'm a really healthy message, blah de blah. And you did a post, was it a tweet the other day that you cut, or a post the other day on Instagram about this brings us back to the body positivity movement, and it kind of being co-opted a little bit. And, you know, I know you have some quite strong thoughts on that. And from my point of view, I kind of try to stay away from body positivity, because I feel like that's not my space. I'm a thin,
exactly,
white, middle-class woman. This is not my space. I shouldn't be in it. So I don't use those kind of hashtags or anything like that. But I see them popping up all the time. And in my line of work, so I'm trained in the application of intuitive eating as a framework. I've noticed since the conversations we had over email, especially on Reels, I'm seeing white, really thin women in crop tops doing Reels about, if you're hungry, just eat it, and all of this. And I think,
oh no,
wait a minute, why are you showing why are you in your swimsuit with a slice of pizza? This is not, it's this counterintuitive kind of, so you think you're following something that's supportive or supporting you, but actually that's not diverse. And as you say, it's that whitewashed face of it, but it's also that it's still a space that's being co-opted by women who look like us.
Exactly. And like, part of it is, you know what, it's really good to showcase women eating pizza, you know, and without a care in the world, eat your pizza, but don't do it within the body positive space. So it's like, you don't have to use those hashtags, you know, because that's one, you know, we need to talk about the ways that we take up space. And I was guilty of it myself. I used to hashtag body positivity. It's important for us to, you know, recognize how we've learned and grown. And then from following fat activists, you realise that actually you're causing erasure within the movement then, because you're taking up space within a movement that was not supposed to centre your body. And that is where we learn, how can we be part of the community and be supportive without centering ourselves? And that is where, like, you know, we don't use the hashtags, we share other people's work, you know, rather than rewording it of our own. You share and you give credit, and we support their messages and their work. And so you get a lot of pushback from the thin community that, you know, body positivity is for all bodies, and whilst that may be true, that the goal is for us all, you know, to reach to be part of the body positivity community, but it's about being part of it without causing harm and taking up space. So that was where I had to do my reflections of how, like, seeing a thin person visibly struggle with their body, how does that impact somebody who may be in, you know, a larger body who's also struggling and getting all kinds of messages from society that there is something wrong with their body? So, you know, when you think of it in that way, it can be harmful, and we really should consider the way that we take up space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of my journey was exactly that. I mean, when I first, I've shared it very openly in this arena, but also on other people's podcasts about my own eating disorder. I had quite severe anorexia through my late teens and early 20s, but still going on a journey of recognizing that whilst I had a battle with my own body, I had thin privilege. I didn't have to, I still don't get judged for what I eat, and I don't have to worry about sitting in a particular seat or any of those things. And as you say, bringing that awareness is really important, and how you turn what are good intentions, and it's not to say that the people in that space don't have good intentions, but into meaningful action. And as you say, that meaningful action is how can we lift up other voices. And I saw a post by Lizzo actually this morning. She was talking about, I don't want to be part of the body, she talks about body positivity, but she said, I just want to be part of a body normative.
Yeah, I saw that
approach.
Post, and I shared that because, you know, that's the end goal, isn't it? We get to the point where all bodies are normal. Yeah. Because what is normal, really? And like, I think when we talk about body positivity and diet culture, we have to talk about white supremacy and racism and how it all ties in together, because diet culture is another extension of white supremacy. You know, it creates a hierarchy of bodies. It's exclusive, it's oppressive. And so I think that is where it becomes so much more than just us being thin, you know. It's about how diet culture actually does impact, you know, people that aren't thin and white. So it definitely goes a lot deeper than just loving our belly rolls.
Yeah,
That's what, yeah.
absolutely. And I, when we think about it, as you say, we need to have conversations around health inequalities in every
Across the
shape and
board, yeah.
across the board, and policy, government policy, and kind of like we have these upstream approaches, but the importance of downstream approaches as well in terms of addressing those issues. And you can't have one without the other, can you? You've got to have conversations about all of it.
I don't know about you because of us being in the UK, but I don't feel like there's as much available to us in regards to this approach as there seems to be like in the States. You know, I googled Hays UK before we came on, and that hasn't been active for a few years, and I do think that's an issue for us at the moment. We have to get a lot of our information, don't we, from you know, research out there in the States and from the accounts in the States. I do think that we're lacking it in the UK, definitely. But that doesn't mean that we can't continue with our approaches in our small little areas.
Yeah.
Because for me, that is part of, okay, so when you start to learn about everything, the anti-racism, the body positivity, you can start to feel a little bit like, so how do I fit into this? What is it that I do? How can I have an impact? And I do actually believe that divesting from diet culture is an act of resistance. And so we are part of the resistance to a system, you know, that is harming people. So I like to see that as, you know, rather than getting overwhelmed of, oh gosh, like I don't know what I can do, I can't change policy on my own, I'm not sure what approach to take. It's about getting really clear about your purpose and where you can make a difference, I think, in your practice every day.
Yeah, I love that. And I have a little saying that I say in my own world. I say I'm trying to gather whispers, because if we can gather enough whispers, we'll become a roar. And that's because that's what it feels like. It feels like diet culture is such this massive storm. It's so strong still. It's worth so much freaking money.
Yeah, I know.
That it feels sometimes personally, I do think, oh my God, I'm like banging my head against a brick wall. But then I think every time I finish working with a client who has made that change, and then they're doing it and they're passing that on to their own kids, I think that every small win is worth it.
It's amazing, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's, go on, sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, how does that come about you must have seen that in your own work, people who've come to you who have had, quite a disordered relationship with movement or exercise in the past. How does that how have you seen that?
So what I'm discovering in my clients, because I'm new, I'm a new business, I didn't really start until January, and I haven't had that many clients, but what I have seen in all of them is it's almost as if they all had this innate knowing themselves that they could trust their bodies and that they could access movement. But because of all the years of conditioning around diet culture, I think they just needed that support and guidance for the acceptance that it's okay. You can, if you don't want to go and lift weights for an hour, you can just go for a hike, you can go for a walk around your estate. So for me, it's that when the clients suddenly become aware that I can make up my own rules in regards to how I move my body, and it doesn't have to be XYZ, because I encourage my clients to go off program. I encourage them to not listen to me. You are the authority of your body, and even the breakthroughs that a lot of them get with being able to rest without feeling guilty. So taking rest days, listening to their body and not moving when they know that it won't help. Or also on the other end, I have clients who have had to work around just doing the 10 minutes and that being enough, because we've been conditioned to believe that, it's all or nothing in the gym. You go and you give it, go hard or go home, So when you're saying just do 10 minutes, they're at first like, well, is that going to be enough? Are you like, is that all you feel like doing? Yeah, just do 10 minutes. That's enough. That's fine. And it's that revelation that, do you know what? I can make up my own rules and I can listen to my body and I can do what feels supportive to me in that moment. And I think because you take away the you know, the weight loss, and so we don't measure our progress, we don't do any progress photos, nothing like that, so they can clearly focus on their voice inside and their relationship with exercise without any of the distraction of the stuff that doesn't really mean anything.
No, and it's so empowering, isn't it, when you see that switch in them. And when a client says to you things like, oh, do you know what, I've just got more energy, I find it easier to wake up, or my moods are so much more stable, you know, I'm not like snapping at the kids so much, you know, all of those changes, that's the value, that's the life enhancing stuff, isn't it?
It is. And also, like, a few of my clients have said that they've had the feelings come up, you know, of, oh, like, I should be losing weight, like, why isn't this happening? But they're able to kind of recognize these feelings but not act on them. And I think, again, that is another big you know, learning, development, growth. We can have those thoughts because they're not going to go away. We live in a weight-centric society. It's like pushed down our throats day in, day out. So I think it would be unrealistic of us to believe that those thoughts will ever go. But it's being able to see them, recognise them, know that they're not true, and like just
move on,
brush them, move on.
Move on. Yeah,
so that's amazing.
That pause, isn't it? It's when I think the key is when people get to work with someone like yourself and they become aware, because it's the first time I think people become aware when you can stand outside of it and go, oh my God, actually, that is how it made me feel, and I hated every part of it. When we've got that awareness, we can build in that kind of like pause. As you say, there's kind of like policing thoughts. They're not going to necessarily disappear, but then you can just retort. You can come back and go, no, actually, I feel better when I, you know, or jog on.
And I also think it's about validating our clients and affirming them that the desire to lose weight may still be there, and it's valid. You know, they're allowed to feel like that in this society that we live in. But what I tend to try and coach around now is, like you say, what would you be willing to give up? You know, and a lot of them are in a different space where they're just not willing to go back down that road. So once they actually weigh it up, it just becomes less desirable.
And I think there's also something there about the fact that there'll always be something else. When you go down that kind of train of thought, that kind of like linear thinking of, well, you know, I'm gonna lose weight or so forth. From the start, my brother's not on this call today, but he's a PT who co-founded Reframe with me, and he said he's worked with clients, men especially. He gets quite a few men presenting with body dysmorphia more and more frequently, thanks to social media images where he, you know, Jim's like, these guys are jacked up on steroids. This isn't something, you know, they're just trying to flog you their protein shake. This isn't achievable. But that's the thing, that's that kind of mindset, is when will it ever be enough as well? So actually the minute we can kind of decouple from it and say, that's not my validator, the comparison isn't where I need to be, it's what's going on inside me, then that's massively freeing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was another side that I discovered from working casually in the gyms, that, it's all smoke and mirrors for a lot of people. You know, there was a lot of people will talk about doing, you know, it's all about dedication, no excuses, but don't talk about the fat burners and the PEDs that they're taking, you know. So I was like, oh my goodness, it just felt really deceptive. That's I think I got to the point where this is totally unethical. It's really deceptive. I do not feel very aligned to this industry. And that was one of the reasons why I went to university as well, because I thought, I can't stop at just being a personal trainer. There is no space for me here. I cannot work in this industry. But luckily at university, that's where I happened upon Health at Every Size. So there was a way forward.
Yeah, and it is an amazing movement, isn't it? I've just done, I think I mentioned to you, Fiona Willer's CPD and non-diet approach, which is like the clinical fallout of Health at Every Size. But once you read the papers, because I wrote it in my reflective practice afterwards, once you read the papers, you cannot, once you know the data, once you know the evidence, you think to yourself, I could not ever put anyone on a weight centric formalized or weight loss plan, when I know what the risks of that are, and the risk of failure and so forth, it would be unethical.
Yeah, unethical, that's the word.
It's unethical. And it is that feeling of I couldn't ever hang my hat in that arena again, because it is, once you know the truth, and it is the truth of the matter.
I know. Well, this was where it all started to click for me at university. I did my dissertation on, do diets work? And that involved, you know, going through quite a few peer-reviewed studies and getting to the conclusion that it's a very tiny percentage. And even then, what behaviours are they, you know, what are they doing to like stay at that weight? But for me, it was such an eye-opener, because I had never questioned dieting before university. Nobody had ever said, oh, diets don't work. It was always, you're not, it's you're the failure, you're not trying hard enough, you try this instead, try it this way, exercise more. So there's never anything that says like, oh, it's the diet that's not working. It was only until I started reading the research and I was like, why are we not told this? And then you get to the ethical, like, why is there no informed consent? Like, why are we not told about the danger, the harm, you know, that can be associated with attempting weight loss intentionally? So I got to that point where it would be unethical to continue down the road of trying to sell intentional weight loss.
Yeah, totally agree. But have you experienced any kind of pushback against that within your industry? I know that I personally in my world have come against, you know, people that think, you know, they have a very they don't understand the nuances of the non-diet approach. They don't understand the, you know, the nuances of intuitive eating, and, you know, they have been like, you know, you're not health promoting. Well, no, that's actually quite the opposite. I am fully health promoting. But, you know, what kind of, like, have you experienced any pushback from?
To be fair, I haven't, mostly because I work online and I chose specifically to work online. I think I got to the realisation that, especially locally, there was no gym that I was going to be able to work at that would accommodate me, because even that gym where I'd first worked casually, they expected you to weigh clients, they expected you to take progress pictures, you know, I was told I would have to look the part. So I think because of that, I just knew that I'd have to carve out my own area within the fitness industry. So I haven't actually come up against the resistance in that way, but it's just knowing that there's no space for me outside. If I did decide, oh, I want to go and do this in real life, I think I would come up against the resistance then.
Do you think there's a shift though? I mean, I don't know about you, but I have noticed some more of the more overt male voices, especially in PTing on social media, have begun to kind of like just begin to creep into the space, you know, start talking about diets don't work long term, start presenting some of the evidence. And I wonder, you know, it's the cynic in me, I wonder how much of that is jumping on the bandwagon, or is there a true kind of movement? I mean, I think within the female space definitely, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I must admit, I've probably created a bit of an echo chamber for myself online. I've tended I haven't followed a lot of accounts. However, there was one that I did have to unfollow recently. I had followed along because I did feel like they was getting it, but then you realise they're actually still promoting weight loss, but maybe in a less overt way, and they're still using that O word a lot, and you think, so you haven't you're catching on that diets don't work, but you haven't gone further into weight stigma and you know, how it's not just about diets not working. We've got to look at the whole reasons why diet work and how, you know, how diet culture affects people. So I know what you mean. I can feel a shift, but at the moment I'm a bit cynical, and I think it may be based on being performative and trying to tap into a market that they can see is
growing.
gaining traction. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think, and that sort of goes back to the when we talk about the whitewashing of movements as well. It's that kind of like, oh well, I'm going to pick this part.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this part and I'm going to pay lip service to it, and then I'm going to crank it out in a way that feels. And I've been reflecting this week since we chatted on email, and I thought to myself, I do wonder, and this is me being really, really honest and transparent, I wonder if it's easier for people to take the intuitive eating, the non-diet message from me, because I look like me.
Yeah, and I think that's the area where we have to consider the ways that we take up space, isn't it? And we don't want to become gatekeepers ourselves. I'm becoming quite aware of that. Like, I try not to post so much of myself on my newsfeed anymore, because that is a problem. I don't know if you was part of the Amplify Melanated Voices that was a couple of months ago. So I did actually mute a lot of fellow white providers, and it was so many more messages came through from black activists, fat activists, and it made me realise actually how much space we do take up within Instagram. So I do agree that some people would probably believe us, but that is something that we have to push back against and constantly redirect people to where we received education from and the messages from. So that's why I think anti-racism work most definitely has to be involved in what we do too, because that teaches us that we shouldn't be looking to white people as the authority on anything. It's a collective. It should be a
collective. Yeah, exactly. I mean, for our members who are looking to like diversify their feed and follow accounts that are not only going to diversify in terms of the kind of like body shapes they're looking at within the health and fitness industry, but in terms of like educating themselves on where movement has come from, where would you suggest some good accounts that you would suggest following or areas to look at?
I can send you over a resource for that. But what I would suggest first is if ever because it's not just about diversifying our newsfeed, is it? We have to go further than that. And I would say I started with Layla Saad's Me and White Supremacy. It was a challenge on Instagram, but she now has a book available. And if you start there, because you need to know how not to approach people's spaces. Like if you're gonna be following a more have a more diverse newsfeed, then you also need to know how to take up space, how to not take up space, how to not cause harm. You've got to be careful that you're not using people as resources, So I would actually say, before I tell you to go and follow people, I would say read Me and White Supremacy and do a bit of work around how we take up space within communities. I think Layla actually has got an IGTV around like us white women taking up space, which I can try and find and forward to you.
That would be great, and then we could put it in the show notes, and I'd love to watch it. And I know that's something that I need to work on, because whilst I still I talk a lot about body diversity and I intellectually want to learn about the history, I get scared of getting it wrong, and that's my white fragility. But I get scared of screwing it up, and that can make me sometimes hold back. And it's getting over that as well is important part of the process, isn't it?
But that's why I definitely would recommend Layla's workbook, because it covers all of that. It's like what I loved about Layla's challenge was that it's an internal process, because once we learn the internal process, we can then begin to question our own beliefs. But then I think it's really important to start learning about the systems, and that's what I was going to say. Another book that I've just finished reading is Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, and then you learn the history about actually how racism was constructed. because I do believe that if we're going to work towards deconstructing something, we have to learn about how it was constructed in the first place. So it would just, I do think we have to be careful about how we take up space, and that is like, as great as it is to follow and support people's work, we need to do so in a way that is not going to cause them any harm. Yeah, so that's why I would just say, just educate ourselves first around that, and then, you know, I'll be happy to send you a list of people that I follow, and amazing people.
Fabulous. And that's a really, you've made such an important point there, such a valuable and important point. Yeah, so definitely let's start where we need to start so we get it right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And your mum, you're a mum too, they're growing up fast, but you've got, you know, your daughter's currently navigating her teenage years. I mean, how would you like things to be different for the next generation as well? I mean, I think I don't know about you, but I feel like it's, as much as there was a lot of crap when we were growing up, you know, the most comparison I got was watching Clueless. Now with the social media, I just feel like it's a harder game again, isn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question. I did write a few things down. I have to be honest, it terrifies me. I'm a UK size 18, so plus size myself. I'm not, my daughter sees my body, you know, I'm very neutral around bodies, and yet she still picked up things. She said, you know, she talks about her bum shape. She won't let me take pictures without, she won't have pictures taken without it being on Snapchat because of the filters. She won't let me post pictures, and it's just terrifying, because I think even though I'm what's the word, modelling, I'm modelling a weight neutral approach. Like, we've got no scales in this house, we don't do anything like that, and yet she's still being, you know, she's absorbing what's out there in society and other family members, friends, you know. So I think it's worrying when you think about it. Like, now it's not just magazines and Photoshop like it was when we was younger. It's enhancements, you know. They've got apps for face tune, body tune, and it's like this unreal. It's when we speak about an unrealistic beauty ideal back when it was Photoshop, now it's the cosmetic surgeries and Botox at the age of 23, lip fillers, and it's terrifying. It really is. So that doesn't sound very positive, does it?
no, but it's, I think it's, you make
scary.
You make such a valid point, because, you know, equally, I'm a mum, and I've not had scales in my house for over 20 years. I mean, because of my own disordered eating, I've not touched them since recovery. So my children have never weighed themselves. I'm very neutral about language. I'm very neutral about food. I try and model all kinds of, you know, movement. I try and model rest, you know, do everything. Yeah. Because I want to protect, I don't ever want them to feel the way I felt. But yeah, it's really, really hard, because they go to school and already there are girls in the class going, oh no, I shouldn't eat that. Or carbs are bad, or because they're inheriting it from their own families, their own parents, these sets of beliefs. So I, from my point of view, I keep thinking to myself, in the same way, I can't stop your heart being broken. I can't stop all the things that I would not like to happen to you happen. If I can just help them stay aware. So, you know, when you went back to saying about how with your clients, they have the voices, but learning to not necessarily turn that voice into an action. Yeah. I think maybe that's the secret. I don't know. Do we help them understand that those things aren't going to go anywhere, but we can support them to kind of intersect?
Think differently, yeah. I try to see it as we're laying the foundation, and we're creating an anchor, so that they're not going to be children, you know, at one point they're going to grow up, and they're probably going to come to their own realizations, and they'll have that foundation that we've helped them to build. So maybe that's something that they'll come home to, because I think often about my mom's relationship with food and dieting and she didn't diet, or she was very neutral around food. She never spoke about our weight. So my mom was actually, my mom, I suppose, modelled just having a normal relationship with food, diet, exercise. So yeah, I feel like at the grand old age of 40, I'm anchoring into those things, you know, that my mom modelled. Like, so I hope it doesn't take our children until they get to 40.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're a bit further forward with things. But I do think we kind of can't feel hopeless. We have to think we are creating these foundations that hopefully one day they will be able to come back to and use. It's just hard, isn't it, to watch them go through the process. And look, I really struggle with, I don't want to validate Evie with her body and be like, but you, there's nothing wrong, you got, you know, your figure's fine. I don't want to do any of that either, because what I'm very conscious of is her body could change again, and I don't want her to think that that one specific body she's in now is the one that she should aspire to. So it's really hard, isn't it, to be like quite intentional with your own language around things. So I've always taught that, look, bodies change because of your hormones, because of life circumstances. I try and teach her that your body will change throughout life and different circumstances, and that's completely normal. So that is kind of the message that I'm trying to drive home, that your body is never going to stay the same, it will always change.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful way of positioning it. Something you mentioned earlier about with your clients under recovering or kind of like struggle, and I think most, if not all, of my clients struggle with the concept of rest and giving themselves permission to, whether or not it's within exercise or just like generally resting, because they feel guilty, because they feel like they need to be productive all the time. And I do, in all cases, it's women. What in your minds, because obviously, you know, we talk a lot about health promoting behaviours, but it goes beyond food and exercise, doesn't it? I mean, from your point of view, what does that look like? What does self-care look like?
Because I have mental health, mental illness, I have depression and anxiety, I've actually had to come to the acceptance that I may need to do things that I don't necessarily want to do so that I can function tomorrow. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
I've had to reclaim the word self-discipline for myself, because self-discipline to me triggered me so much in regards to like diet culture and everything. But I've now been able to come back to it as an act of self-care. So it doesn't sound revolutionary at all, but it is for me. So I force myself to like wash up daily, and then it has such a massive impact on my well-being the next day that I wake up to a clean kitchen. And I can't believe that that is like a non-negotiable value, that I'm saying I have to make myself wash up. So I think it's not only knowing when to rest. I'm quite good at that now, giving myself permission. I know I can feel when I need to rest and not feeling at all guilty about it. But it's also knowing when I do need to do the things that I don't necessarily want to do. And it's very strange to reclaim that outside of diet culture. Do you know what I mean? Because we're not talking about punishment and like doing the punishing exercising and all that. It's about like simple things that, like the washing up, that is part of my self-care toolkit.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I think that's a very strange way of saying that it's about all these behaviours that we once associated with diet culture and all these words and things that come up. I think you have to kind of push everything away, and then you can come back to a place where you can sort through the things, the words that are actually quite helpful. I don't know, it's a very long journey and process of figuring out the things that work.
Sometimes we have to put a framework back around ourselves.
Yes, because that's it. So you reject it. So I rejected it totally when I was going through the journey. I didn't do any structured exercise. You know, I kind of rejected all of these beliefs and narratives. But now that I've kind of healed in a way, I can come back and be like, no, I can bring structure back to my life.
Yeah.
I can have a framework to work from, and it's a supportive, intuitive.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we've got there.
Exactly that. Is exactly that. It is a framework, and that's, I mean, that's one of the nuances of the whole kind of like intuitive thing. Is intuitive movement and intuitive eating is very much about, you know, you have to reject diet culture, you have to reject that mentality, but it's also acknowledging within that there's that grey area of, whilst we're relearning, or even after we've been through the journey, those frameworks can be supportive. So using our knowledge, sometimes we have to use our knowledge, our intellectual knowledge, versus the, you know, the feeling. So she say exactly that. The feeling might be, I'm really tired, I don't want to wash up, but your knowledge knows that actually if I do that now, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to be able to approach my day from a more positive place. And the same goes with eating. You know, intuitive clients always, there's that grey area. Intuitive eating gets peddled as like hunger and fullness, which it isn't. That's like 1 of 10 principles. But, you know, and I say to my clients, we can put a framework around your eating. It's like putting stabilizers back on and using your knowledge that actually, if I know I might not want to eat an afternoon snack, but I know if I don't, I'm going to feel pretty crappy, and then I'll end up using my phone too much, and I'll end up opening the bottle of wine, you know, and it's it's that balance.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think you have to go through that stage of, it's a bit like, I first heard the term in a podcast with Laura Thomas, but I do believe it was Jess Baker that first came up with the pendulum swing. That so you go from diet culture to like reject it all, and then you find that balance back in the middle. And I think that's where I am now.
And if you had an opportunity then to like speak to the whole world, if Karen was on top of the mountain, you all have my attention, what would you want to share with people?
Oh, this was such a hard question.
Sorry, Karen. Someone once asked me it, and I went, "Oh, that's a good one."
Well, I think considering how things are at the moment, I would literally stand on top of the mountain and say we all need each other. You know, we are all as important as each other, and we all need to work together in collaboration to build strong and just and safe communities. I think that's what I would want to say, that, you know, we are all as valuable as each other, and we all should work in collaboration with each other and to create a more peaceful and just and safe society. So,
Karen, I think that's probably one of the best answers we've had.
Okay.
To create a strong, just and safe society. I think that's pretty cool in my book. So I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on today. You have been inspiring, and you've helped me reflect, and I'm very grateful for you coming into the Reframe Club and chatting to us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.